Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of CTLN Opinion Plus. As you know, this is a space for the issues and concerns for the Latino community. Today we are talking to William Ginsberg, the President and CEO of the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. Thank you for joining us, Will. How are you?
Thank you, Savani. I'm good, and I'm delighted to be with you today. I'm a big fan of Connecticut Latino news, so it's a privilege for me to join you today.
Well, that just made my whole week. Thank you for saying that. Can you give us a brief explanation of the work that the Community Foundation does?
Sure, I'm happy to, and appreciate the opportunity. So the Community Foundation is the charitable endowment and the charitable foundation for Greater New Haven, and in our definition, that's a 20-town region centered on New Haven, stretching from Milford to Madison to Wallingford, and as I said, centered on New Haven. We are the community's charitable endowment, so we support, make grants. This year we'll make more than $30 million in grants to support charitable activity and nonprofit organizations in Greater New Haven. We raise money on an ongoing basis, so this is, and we manage the endowment. The endowment today is almost $800 million. Which reflects the fact that the foundation has been around since 1928, so we're 93 years old, and it reflects the fact that our community is one that has been characterized for almost a century by deep, broad generosity and commitment to making Greater New Haven a better place and supporting the people and institutions of this community to do that. You know, our mission is to build a community in Greater New Haven that's more connected, more inclusive, more equitable, and more philanthropic. Our focuses are, we're focused on opportunity and equity specifically. That's the title of our strategic plan that we adopted in 2019 and that we are investing deeply in as a reflection of the needs that exist in the community because of COVID over the last year.
You guys on your website have something called permanent resources like the Progreso Latino Fund. Can you go a little bit into detail about that and how that does balance the inequalities in Connecticut?
Yeah, so the permanent funds, the foundation really is a composite of well over 1,000 individual funds that have been established by over those 93 years that I referred to, by individuals, by families, by groups of people who have had particular interests in making Greater New Haven better and stronger, not only during their lives, but after they're gone. And that's the permanence notion. The foundation is structured and we operate as if we're going to be here in perpetuity, carrying out donor wishes and the wishes of the people who've created the foundation and created the funds at the foundation forever. The Progreso Latino Fund is one of our many funds. It's a very important one for us because it's the leading edge of how we work with the Latino community. PLF, as we call it, has been around now since 2003. It was originally created by two Latino leaders in our community, John Padilla and Francis Padilla, who have had many leadership positions in the community. And Francis actually worked at the foundation many, many years ago. And John was actually on the board of the foundation and chaired the board of the foundation many years ago. The fund has had great leaders in the years since. Fernando Muniz, who's well known in the state among the Latino community and is now on our board of directors. And has great leaders now in Tara Davila and Yadi Ije. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing Yadi's last name correctly. So the Progreso Latino Fund exists certainly to raise money and make grants, but also to highlight issues of importance to the Latino community in the state. The fund has, working with us, we've put on over many years, we've put on some great forums, bringing great speakers to the state and highlighting issues of particular relevance and importance and concern to Latinos in Connecticut.
What are the goals for 2021 for the Progreso Latino Fund? I'm assuming it has something to do with COVID recovery, probably.
Yes. the goals, let me answer that more broadly. The goals for the Community Foundation, we are very focused on COVID recovery and on equity and racial equity. Coming out of really starting a year ago, we saw the kind of devastation that COVID was creating in health terms, in economic terms, and of course, the Latino community has been particularly hard hit. As I'm sure you and your viewers know, the Latino community has been particularly hard hit by COVID in all sorts of terrible ways. So the foundation, working with Progreso Latino Fund and working with many of our volunteer groups, is tackling the COVID issue head on. And one of the things we've done this year is we're calling the initiative Stepping Forward. We've gone much deeper into our endowment to extract monies from our endowment for the next 3 years, for 2021, 2022, and 2023, to address the impacts of COVID and to advance racial equity and equity generally in our community. So we consider PLF a very important partner in all of that work. And the Latino leaders that we work with in PLF and more broadly in the community help us to understand the Latino perspective on these issues and how we can address COVID and equity issues in particular related to the Latino community.
It seems I ask this question in almost every interview, but there's a huge gap between the very poor and the not very poor in Connecticut. The data, the progress report for Greater New Haven in 2019 details the necessity and outcomes of the community. And there's a line in the report that says the share of the population living in the poorest neighborhoods has gone up, in particular among Black and Brown residents. Your organization established the Basic Needs Fund. Can you tell us a bit about that fund and what it addresses?
Yes, I'm happy to. So the Basic Needs Fund, and this again is related to COVID, although it's not entirely related to COVID, we have supported organizations providing basic needs to needy people in this community really forever. Mm-hmm. And what do I mean by basic needs? I mean food, I mean shelter, I mean basic health needs, I mean basic hygiene needs. And so this has been a priority for the Community Foundation and for the charitable sector in our community from the very beginning. The Basic Needs Fund has emerged over the last couple of years as a dedicated endowment to support that kind of activity. And it's been led by some volunteers working with us and our staff to create this fund and raise money for this fund. And I'm pleased to say we've had very good donor response. Mm-hmm. And we have a committee of donors and others that is taking shape now to help work on how that money is going to be distributed into the community. So this is an expansion of and an extension of a longstanding commitment of the foundation to address basic needs. Savannah, your point about in citing the 2019 Community Index and the point about more and more of really the community in some sense, this community and indeed communities all across this country are more and more divided. Yes. With poor living with the poor, Black and Brown populations, segregation, and Connecticut suffers terribly from these issues. And one of our focuses at the foundation, and people think of this more as something that the for-profit sector focuses on than the nonprofit sector, but one of our focuses is growth, because Connecticut has been a slow-growing state, and Connecticut has not been a state that's been creating opportunities for people the way some of the faster-growing parts of the country are. And I think we need to change that. And when I say we, I mean all of us. I don't just mean the charitable sector or the community foundation, but we need government and we need business and we need other institutions and we need the charitable sector working together to stimulate more growth that creates more opportunity for more of our community. So growth that is inclusive growth is a priority for the Community Foundation. And it's why our strategic plan is entitled Opportunity and Equity. creating more opportunity and having that opportunity shared equitably. And a big part of that, I think, and it goes to your point about the neighborhoods, a big part of that is urban growth, because the Black and brown populations in this state, not entirely, of course, I'm generalizing, but are very concentrated in the urban areas. The urban areas are islands of poverty and islands of need in a very prosperous state. And for too long, I think we, as the state of Connecticut, not only government, but have viewed the cities as social problems to be solved with social programs, not as engines for growth. If cities like New Haven can become the engines for growth in this state, opportunities will open up in ways that they haven't in recent years and haven't in the past for the urban populations, for people of color, for the Black and brown population. So as we think long term, that's the way we think about it. And of course, that would be a new story in some sense, but it's an old story in other sense. That's why people from Latin America, it's why the Latino community came here in the first place. It's why the Black community came from the South in the first place, was for those kind of opportunities. And we need to recreate those kind of opportunities in our state.
I agree. I do have a question. In your opinion, in your opinion, how effective can a philanthropic organization be during a time when tensions are really high? There's so much need, and wealth is looked at more critically.
Right. Well, it's a very good question, and it's one that the philanthropic community, I can assure you, at every level in this country is struggling with and focusing on. From my perspective, this is our moment as a community foundation, and for community foundations around the country. I mean, there are 750 or so community foundations around the country, all in communities large and small, all across America. I say that because this is a time of tension. This is a time of division. This is a time when the society is being pulled apart. And what we are about fundamentally, yes, we're about charitable giving. Yes, we're about charitable grant making. Yes, we're about supporting the nonprofit sector. But what we're fundamentally about is community. You can see it on the banner behind me. This is about community. It's about how we bring people together with a sense of shared destiny, with a sense of a shared future, and things like equity and opportunity are critical to that. But it's how we bring people together. So that's our approach to the times we're living in, and that's why we felt that this was the moment. I mentioned stepping forward before. This was the moment to make an extraordinary extraction from our endowment, because the needs are there and the opportunity is there to bring our community more closely together. That's if we allow the divisiveness of these times to pull us apart, we will never be able to address the issues that our community faces. And if we can surmount that and come together, we will. This is a community that believes in itself. And it's why it's a privilege to do this work in Greater New Haven.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. This has been really informative, and thank you for answering every question that I threw at you.
So, Monty, it's a pleasure for me, and I thank you for the opportunity to be with you and your viewers today, and I hope we can do it again. So thanks so much.
All right, thanks. Thanks again to Will for joining us, and to learn more about the Community Foundation, we will have the link along with other resources on our webpage. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget to follow us on all of our social media handles at CT Latino News on Twitter and on Instagram at CT_Latino News. I'm Simani Campos with CT Latino News Opinion Plus. See you next time.